The big news around the NHL right now is that the Toronto Maple Leafs lost once again in the first round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs to the Boston Bruins, and there is no doubt that their core four of players is over. One or more of Auston Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, or John Tavares will certainly be on their way out. Former Flames GM Brad Treliving has a lot on his plate, and this is the perfect opportunity for the Flames to strike and offer a blockbuster deal that could definitely benefit the Calgary Flames. We will get into all of that and more in this video, but first, I want to welcome you to Flames Digest. I'm Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you love the Flames, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around the Calgary Flames. We would love to welcome you to the Flames Digest family, but like I said, the Flames, they are poised to make a move here because of what is going on in Toronto. Look at who we're dealing with. It's a familiar face, right? The Flames could offer a blockbuster trade here, and I don't know, it could really benefit the Flames. Now, let's get into the first player. He's in the thumbnail. It is Mitch Marner, and I know to start things off, a lot of Flames fans will absolutely veto that. They do not want Marner. It's pretty much just Johnny Gaudreau 2.0. A smaller guy, a playmaker, someone who doesn't necessarily show up in the playoffs. And look, he just had a pretty bad playoffs. I think he'll come cheaper than his value was, let's say, a season or two ago. Leafs fans are not happy with Mitch Marner right now. Flames fans, I know they don't exactly want Marner. There's better pieces of that core four, or just from the Leafs in general that they'd want. But there is a bit of a case to make for Marner to come to the Flames. Now, the first thing is that he has chemistry with Nazem Kadri. Kadri could be the number one center this year for the Calgary Flames, and he's played with Marner before and played well. There were articles back in the day that were saying, look, Marner has never had a line mate like Kadri. Kadri has never had a line mate like Mitch Marner. They do have some good chemistry. It's just unfortunate for Kadri that he ended up being the odd man out once his contract was up. The Leafs had no more room for him. They were obviously going to delve deeper into Auston Matthews' development. Kadri was there for quite a while, but after a few playoffs and coming up short and, getting suspended because the NHL has a vendetta against Naz, he was definitely the odd man out. Now that he's established himself in Calgary, wants to be here for the rebuild, they could potentially bring someone in that has played with him before that Kadri likes to play with. Who wouldn't like to play with Mitch Marner? I understand he's not a playoff performer. He's a smaller guy. The Flames want to add some size, but there is potential for a deal here. So let's look at Marner's stats. This has been his whole NHL career. He's played 576 games over 8 years. Kind of hard to believe he's played 8 years already, but he has 639 points in those 576 games, well over a point per game. And a lot of people think, look, he only gets assists. It's just because he feeds Auston Matthews. That's the only reason why he has so many points. He can tuck the puck as well. He's been a very good goal scorer. He had a 35 goal season in 2022. It's weird how his stats have almost, they're so similar to Johnny Gaudreau's time in Calgary as well, with some really good seasons and then, maybe some not so great seasons with not as many goals. But either way, I know Flames fans, we do not like Johnny Gaudreau. It's so bad to compare a player to him, but we can't deny Johnny Gaudreau's time in Calgary was very good. Mitch Marner could potentially recreate that. He's not a bad player at all. A big part of why Flames fans would say no to this as well is that they want to commit to this rebuild and develop the youth, which is extremely true. However, with the players that the Flames might trade away, which we'll get into later in this video, it's not a bad idea to get at least one good player back instead of just getting prospects and picks. It's never a bad thing to have some star players, some firepower in your organization. But that's the case for Marner. I don't know. Personally, for me, I'd rather have another piece of the core four. I don't think the Leafs would be willing to give up Auston Matthews, and I don't think anyone really wants John Tavares. So who does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with William Nylander. He was easily the Leafs' best player in this playoffs. Once he was finally healthy, he went through a weird injury sort of thing. Was it migraines? Was it illness? Was it another mystery injury? I don't know what was going on there. But once he was back, he was scoring goals. He got both in Game 6 that led the Leafs to a Game 7. He got the goal in the Game 7, but the Leafs did end up losing that one. But look, William Nylander, he is born in Calgary. Bring him back home. And speaking of home, look at this. I'm finally back in the studio, back at my home. It feels good to be home. I know the regulars of the channel will say, where the heck have you been? Well, look, I'm finally back in the studio. We've got the backdrop. But William Nylander is a really, really good player. And just like Mitch Marner, well, guess what? He also has good chemistry with Nazem Kadri. If you go back to the 2019 season, Kadri and Nylander were fantastic together in the playoffs before Kadri ended up getting suspended. I believe that was that year. But either way, they have chemistry, and they have chemistry when it counts in the playoffs. One really bad thing about Marner is that he's pretty much a notorious playoff dud. Nylander, that's not the case. He has 20 postseason goals now. He has been the Leafs' best player over the past X amount of postseasons now. He has been unreal in the playoffs. And the fact that he has some good chemistry with Kadri when it counts is a big reason to bring him in. Now, if we pull up his stats, they might be a little more enticing than Marner's for Flames fans as well. Look at this, back-to-back 40-goal seasons. The Flames need goal scorers. They already have some playmakers like Jonathan Huberdeau, for sure. Imagine a line of Nylander, Huberdeau, and Kadri. All guys who can tuck the puck and play it around a bit. I mean, Huberdeau's more on the side of being the pure playmaker, but he can get back to that 115-point pace if he had line mates like these and built some chemistry with them. Now, Nylander is a really, really, really good player. I like him a lot. If the Flames were to grab someone of that core four that the Leafs are sure to blow up, I think Nylander would be the best bet. And he might not come as expensive as a lot of people think. So now that we know what we're kind of looking at here from the Leafs, let's get more into who we're dealing with. So let's look at who we're dealing with here. It shouldn't be that hard to make a trade, and the Flames have a lot to offer in a package as well. Now, the first thing when I say look at who we're dealing with here, I'm talking about this man, Brad Treliving. He obviously is very familiar with Craig Conroy, and Flames fans, we know what Brad Treliving brings to the table. He is not exactly the smartest man when it comes to trades. The Leafs and Flames have made lots of blockbuster trades in the past. You think back to the Doug Gilmour one, way back in the day. Oh, sorry if I offended anyone. It's just before my time. That's why I say way back. But you think of the Dion Phaneuf trade in more recent history anyway. The Flames and Leafs have made some trades. And now with Brad Treliving at the helm of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Flames could fleece the Leafs. We know that Brad doesn't bring everything to the table, and we know Conroy will have more power over anything Treliving can do in a trade scenario like this. And who are some of the players that the Flames can trade? Well, here's two of them. The big one, obviously, Jacob Markstrom there on the right. The Leafs haven't had an A1 goalie in, I don't even know how long. I'm going to say Johnny Bauer back in the day. But even in the playoffs in these past couple games, Samsonov was okay in Game 7. Joseph Woll was great. But the Leafs, I'm sure, would rather commit to an already bona fide star number one goaltender like Jacob Markstrom. And he could easily fit right into that organization. The Leafs have some former Flames defensemen there that Markstrom has played with before in Brody and Gio. It'll be interesting to see if they're on the Leafs roster at all come next season. But let's say they ship Rasmus Andersson away too, because what the Leafs really, really need is goalie and defense. I would argue defense more in terms for the Leafs. I think your goalie is a good representation of how good your defense is. Look at Jacob Markstrom this year. He had great numbers while Tanev and Hanifin were still Flames, and then fell off a cliff after the trade deadline, way out of the Vezina conversation. That means if the Leafs are to build up a good, defensive core, they could really, really, really be great. So Andersson could be a great contender for that. And maybe the Leafs would send a defenseman back to Calgary. Not too sure. The Flames, I'm sure, will use a lot of their assets to gain more good defensemen. They've got tons in the pipeline that aren't quite ready yet for the NHL. That's why they have, some of those guys who are kind of fill-ins right now, like Pahal and Hanley. But I think the Leafs could definitely look at Jacob Markstrom and Rasmus Andersson. And there's one other guy who I think the Flames could just kind of throw in, especially if there's some salary retention, the Leafs could send even more our way, and that man is Andrew Mangiapane. I don't know why, but he seems like he just fits into a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey. I know he's kind of on the outs a bit with a lot of Flames fans after a rough season. He's representing Canada right now in the World Championships, which should be really, really cool. Congratulations to him. That's super sweet. But he could be another contender that could go to Toronto. We could have Markstrom, Andersson going. It could be very, very interesting. And I'm sure the Flames would win if there were some sort of blockbuster trade involving a lot of roster players. Now let's get into tonight's game. And no, of course I'm not talking about the Flames. They were eliminated weeks ago. I'm talking about the Calgary Wranglers. They have Game 2 of their second round series against the Coachella Valley Firebirds tonight, the Pacific Division semifinals. The Wranglers are up 1-0. Game 2, the other game in the Saddledome, goes at 4 p.m., which is actually pretty soon. Should be super, super exciting. I expect a big crowd. All game happy hour specials. The whole game, you get happy hour, which I think means $6 food and $6 bevies. It should be absolutely super, super exciting. I hope I can catch some of that game. But the Wranglers have a good chance to take an absolute stronghold, a stranglehold on this series. It's the last game in Calgary for this series. So if they can go up 2-0, that means they only have to win one more game in Coachella Valley. And the way Wolf is playing, the way Klapka is playing, they have a strong chance at really being a great team in these playoffs and going far. Now let's wrap up this video with the comment of the day, everyone's favorite part of the day. And we had a question actually from a regular viewer, and that person is Bashful Productions. Thank you so much for always commenting and just being a great fan of the channel. He said, hey, just a question. How come players like Zary, Dewar, Pospisil, Hunt, etc. are not playing for the Wranglers currently? Do you know by any chance? Yes, the reason for this is that by the NHL trade deadline, wherever that player was assigned to, whether it was the AHL or the NHL, is their eligibility for those playoffs. So right before the trade deadline, Conroy did some paperwork, and Pelche and Coronado were sent down to the Wranglers, as was Wolf at the time, and that's why some of those players are playing for the Wranglers currently. Now, other guys like Pospisil, Hunt, Dewar, the other ones named in there, Zary, of course, we're all at the NHL level. Conroy pretty much, assured them that they are NHL ready and NHL level players, so they were on the Flames and would have played for the Flames had the playoffs, had the Flames been in the playoffs. So pretty much that answers the question. So wherever a player is assigned to at the NHL trade deadline, just before it, is where they are eligible to play, especially, of course, for the AHL, and that is why. But the Wranglers still have a really good roster heading, or throughout these playoffs, I should say. So hopefully the Wranglers can go far and win that Calder Cup. That does it for this video today. Let me know any mock trades down below between the Flames and Leafs. That could be super, super exciting. Please subscribe if you like what you saw here today, and have a wonderful rest of your day.